Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm 33 years old. I was born and raised in Texas, but I currently live in Los Angeles and I work in the entertainment industry. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in 2014. And shortly after, because his oncologist had asked, about his family history, and his mother had died of breast cancer in her mid 50s. So his oncologist suggested that both my sister and my sister is 6 years older than I am, to get genetic testing. I, of course, procrastinated for a little bit, so I didn't get tested until 2017, which was about 3 years after my dad's diagnosis. And that's when I discovered that I tested positive for the BRCA1 gene. Once I found out that I carried the BRCA gene, my family was a little bit in the dark about the situation because we had never heard about the genetic mutation before. It kind of felt isolated, like we were in our own little bubble of the situation that we were dealing with. I later discovered Paige Moore, who is Paige Reviver on Instagram, and she was discussing she has the BRCA gene as well. And she shared her story about undergoing a preventative mastectomy. So once I learned about that, I started researching myself about the different options that were available to me. So between surgeries and surveillance, which was doing, the annual mammograms and doing the blood tests and the ultrasounds for screening for ovarian cancer, it was definitely overwhelming because it's the decision of if you want to have surgery or if you kind of just want to wait around. Because my dad's family history was so strong with cancer, as his father was later diagnosed with colon cancer as well. The surgery route seems like the best option for me. So this was in 2017. Again, when I was tested, I decided to go forward with the surgery. My dad was hesitant at first because, he'd never dealt with something before, and he held a lot of guilt of having passed the gene on to me, but also my sister. My sister also tested positive. And so I moved forward with interviewing different plastic surgeons. Paige actually connected me with Dr. Christy Funk, who was my breast surgeon, and Dr. Kim was my plastic surgeon for my initial surgery. So in 2018, May of 2018 is when I had my preventative mastectomy. Unfortunately, my father passed away about a week after I had my surgery, but I was able to talk to him the day after my surgery, and it was kind of full circle and brought me peace because he expressed to me, I'm very proud of what you did. I know it was a hard decision to have. And so he at least had that kind of peace of, I'd done something major to reduce my risk for breast cancer. And after that, so May of 2018, in November is when I had my implant exchange. The route I went for surgery was the expanders, and then I had implants placed. And during my implant exchange, in between, so over the summer, I had started my surveillance for ovarian cancer, and there with Dr. Cass, who was out of Cedars-Sinai, she and I decided to remove my fallopian tube because she had told me, some research, which actually I had also found through Vassar, was the research of removing the fallopian tube, since that was the majority of where the BRCA genes related to ovarian cancer, that's where the cancer originally started. So as a preventative measure before taking out my ovaries, because that would have sent me into early menopause, it seemed like the viable option. And it still, it still leaves me the chance to go undergo IVF if I want to have kids. And it still, delays having to make the decision later if I want to remove my ovaries, which will happen in, I don't know, about 3 to 5 years. They recommend between ages 35 and 40. So I'm 2 surgeries down. I'm actually undergoing a revision surgery to adjust my implants, which is somewhat common with people who undergo a mastectomy, just because body shifts, things change. And yeah, so, I'm very happy with the decisions that I made. I was very, advocating for myself. I know this is not an option for everyone. So I realize, I have a lot of privilege to have the healthcare that I have, to have insurance, and to be able to have made the decisions I have, because it's, at least within the Latinx community, it's very rare there aren't, at least that I haven't come across, a lot of previvors. A lot of us are mostly, cancer thrivers. They're usually diagnosed before they can decide to undergo surgeries. So I feel very, thankful that I was able to make decisions that I did. And now my sister, She's been doing the surveillance route, but she and I have been talking lately, and she's looking to undergo her own preventive surgeries, I think next summer. So it's been nice. She was a little, she was a little upset at first because, you know, she's the bigger sister and she felt responsible of, this is something that I should have gone through myself first. And, you know, being like a little sister, I went through everything first, but it's been nice to, you know, talk to her about the different options that are available to her. And, you know, she saw what I went through. So it kind of prevents her, kind of helps her mentally, you know, prepare for what's ahead.
Yeah.
So when I first approached, you know, the different decisions of what I wanted to do, knowing that I carried the BRCA gene, was I didn't see too many, specifically when I was looking for plastic surgeons, you know, I was looking for the after photos of what my reconstruction would look like. And it was very difficult to find photos of people of color. You know, the majority of the surgeries were on white women. So knowing what my skin would look like, how I would heal after surgery. Thankfully, my plastic surgeon, Dr. Kim, had brought up, I didn't know this until it had happened, but the majority of people of color, because we have melanated skin, have a tendency to have keloid scarring, which means that your incisions heal kind of raised. And so because I hadn't seen what that would look like, it was something that I wasn't prepared for. And thankfully, she was able to fix it when she did when she placed my implants. But it's questions like that that people don't think to ask, you know, as a person of color, you know, how is my skin going to react to surgical tape? How is my, you know, what is my nipple placement going to look like? Because, you know, our skin is a little bit darker, so our nipples tend to be darker. Specifically with keloid scarring, for those who choose not to spare their nipples, you know, how is that going to look if we have the risk of keloid scarring? Like, is it going to look aesthetically pleasing to us? And as far as accessibility, that was a big issue that I came across. I didn't experience it myself, but, you know, just coming upon the research of, there aren't many Latinx doctors and plastic surgeons, or there weren't, you know, majority of general practitioners weren't as educated in the BRCA genes and, you know, what steps could be taken. And so I felt that sharing my story would, you know, help people my age, and, you know, even sharing my story because my sister has 3 kids, you know, sharing my story would help them later on decide what they want to do if they find out that they carry the gene. And, you know, I think there's something to be said about social media and sharing your story. I've had friends who don't carry the genetic mutation, but, you know, thank you for sharing monthly, you know, to do a self breast exam. You know, I found a lump myself, so now I'm going to get checked. So I think just sharing your story, it's something that somebody can connect with, and specifically coming from the Latinx community, I think it's, you know, a conversation that's worth talking about. It's very hush hush within the Latinx community to discuss, you know, personal health issues, or, you know, if coming from an immigrant family, they're not as versed in going through the medical system. There's not a lot of medical resources available in Spanish. So I think sharing my decision to share my story, I hope it opens up a bigger conversation for families to discuss amongst themselves. And I think also, you know, despite my father having passed away the way that he did in such timing, it was kind of a traumatic experience. But at the same time, you know, the overall experience of finding out about our genetic mutation, it really brought our family closer. And so it's something that, you know, even that we were grieving through, it's something that we can share together, having experienced ourselves. So we have both a perspective of having lost a loved one to cancer. You know, I lost both my grandparents and my father, but then also, you know, having, like you said, you know, the piece of hope of preventing this for either my future kids, or, you know, being able to share this with my nieces and nephew. It's been an interesting experience, but, you know, I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat, even knowing that my father would pass in the same situation. It felt best for me. And, you know, I'm able to finally just live my life without the worry of developing cancer. I still have to go through surveillance, but at least, you know, I don't have that kind of shadow that's just, you know, following behind me. And it was a very empowering experience. So for anybody who's been newly diagnosed with a genetic mutation, you know, I really encourage them to, you have an array of resources at your hands. You know, the Baxter Center is great for the research, for the different studies about different genetic mutations. There's also other organizations that are directed for directed towards people of color, such as For the Breast of Us. There's also the organization, The Breasties, which helps connect community members of previvors, survivors, and thrivers. And even just, connecting via social media, it's great to reach out. I'm a likely resource to reach out to because it can be very overwhelming, but there's a lot of resources out there to help share with your family and to help explore the different options that are available to you.